We'll see how this goes. This is the first video shot on my new phone. Hopefully the quality is better. I don't know. It looks maybe a little washed out. Also, of course, our landscapers are here today blow drying the pavement, so chances are there will be some loud noise interfering as I record this video. Won't that be lovely? What am I looking at today? It is the Game Master's Book of Traps, Puzzles, and Dungeons by Jeff Ashworth, part of the Game Master book series, which I have shown before. The Book of Random Encounters, the book here of non-player characters, and this one, which I'm actually reading at time of recording, the Proactive Role-Playing. This has some really interesting ideas, some practical ideas, so I'm hoping that hoping they work. I'm going to try to implement them in an upcoming game, and we'll see. Hopefully they work. Anyhow, this one here is the Book of Traps, Puzzles, and Dungeons. I picked this up because it was cheap. I've said before, I am a bargain hunter. I am cheap. And this was on a substantial sale and was very inexpensive. So I ended up picking it up. And these are nice hardcovers, full, snapping. I think these are stitched, I think. So hopefully the snapping isn't going to be because they're about to fall apart. Anyway, I believe these are some fairly good quality hardcovers and not just going to come apart. What do we have here? Well, here's... Here is a table of contents, I think. Yes, table of contents. If you want to pause and take a look at that. Now, I am not somebody who... I was never a big player of the... what is now considered the old school RPG, which I think was just a hyper-specific version of D&D and D&D adjacent games played in mostly magical non-time of the nebulous 70s and 80s. Not that I don't believe in the so-called OSR. I just don't think that a lot of folks who talk a lot about it know what they're talking about. Oh gosh, I said that out loud. Anyway, I'm not a big fan of the adversarial DM, so I'm not a big fan of, I remember, boy, I'll tell you what, Grimtooth's Traps, those books were out, and they were hysterical. They were very funny to look through. But nobody, I say nobody, I never knew anyone. And I worked in a game store and I met a lot of gamers. I never knew anyone who ever actually used even one single complete Grimtooth's Trap ever in a game, because they were ridiculous. They were something that you read and laughed about. They weren't something you actually used against your players. Now, maybe there are DMs out there who used those games against their players, or those traps against their players. I would imagine they did not have players that like to stick around for very long. So what do we have? I'm not sure. That looks like there are, kind of like with the Book of Random Encounters, it looks like we start out with some adventures in here. Oh, nice. I found ship deck plans oddly difficult to track down. Now, not entirely, I have since found a bunch, but it's weird how sometimes things that seem like they should be relatively easy and basic are actually kind of difficult to track down when you need them. Let's see, another one here. So what do we have? We have an adventure for levels 1 to 5, and with like an 11, this adventure, can't use my fingers to flip pages, so level 6 to 10. Level 7 to 12. These are leveled and statted, obviously, for 5e. It does put itself somewhere on here. Game Master 5e. It does say that it's 5e compatible, but you know, it's not super hard to convert or translate over 5e stuff to other game systems. I've done it so far for, I mean, way back when I used other D&D source books from earlier editions of D&D for running basic role-playing games, but or at least for ideas and maps and scenario ideas and that sort of thing. But I've used 5e material for Dungeon Crawl Classics, and it ports over fairly quickly and easily once you get used to the different systems. So here we go. This is the meat of it. We have painful traps, deadly traps, and disruptive traps, and complex traps in our trap section. So, you know, it looks like we have, I don't want to say Grimtooth level traps, but it looks like we have a bunch of different traps to use with some illustrations, I guess, about how they would work. This can be fun. I mean, obviously with traps, it depends on the kind of game that you're running, and you want to make sure, I think, you want to make sure that you broadcast ahead of time that it's there. Otherwise, you know, and I think you should probably do, was it Matt Colville? I know I reference him a bunch. It's odd for somebody who doesn't do D&D like me, but I watched a lot of his videos, and he has some good advice. And the multiple failed state thing, I think with traps where, you know, he illustrates the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark where Indy succumbs to multiple traps but manages to still survive. And sometimes the traps are multifaceted and he still survives. Here we go. Puzzles. This is more interesting to me. Rhymes and riddles, ciphers, gateway puzzles. That kind of thing can be fun. Nothing super difficult. You're not, you know, players are there to have fun and enjoy themselves and not make their brains melt. But it can be fun to have a little bit of a riddle. I think that, like in Call of Cthulhu, where you don't want clues, you don't want progress of the mystery to be locked behind clues. In the same way, I don't think you want progress in your game to be locked behind a riddle, but a riddle might be an interesting way maybe to sidetrack and cut around a problem, or find an extra thing, you know, find the secret room, that kind of thing. So that, I think, is where puzzles and ciphers and things like that can really come into play. And maybe you have a cipher that the PCs get early on in an ongoing game, and as time goes on, they find other pieces of it, or hints, or clues, or pieces to figure things out, so they have a reason to continue to investigate and eventually find their way into what they need. Here we go. Dungeon Chambers. 50 unique rooms guaranteed to terrorize and taunt your party long after they leave the table. Proceed with caution. So, I'm guessing... Oh, that was not what I would have guessed. So this looks like it is complete dungeon rooms with some kind of tomfoolery going on inside the room. That could be interesting. I'll certainly be interested in checking it out, seeing if maybe some of them would make sense. This mossy hill looks like it might have something to do with spiders. Maybe? Although, no, that doesn't seem like it comes up in the creature thing. I'm working on right now a scenario. I actually may be using a Dragonbane scenario in an upcoming Dungeon Crawl Classics game that deals with spiders. That could be fun. Turntable kind of reminds me a little bit of that big dungeon from Dungeon Crawl Classics, the number 100, the Music of the Scarce is Chaos, I think is what it's called. Anyway, this does have something that I've sort of, you know, complained about, I guess, in the past with these maps. and that is that they're very kind of they're kind of busy for what is, I think, as presented here, ultimately a game master focused map. So I'm the person who's going to be describing this. I'm not going to show this to my players. And so all of the kind of extra art, and especially in the grayscale, I find, frankly, it to be unnecessary. I would have actually probably liked just basic line drawing. That's a personal preference. Now, if these were available as free downloads from this website, for example, as something that I could then print out and have player facing, and maybe they are, but I don't believe so. I didn't look before doing this look through, but I believe I've looked before, and I want to say there might be a package, like a PDF package you can buy to get some of the maps for the books. I could be talking out of my butt on that. I'm not sure. But anyway, if there were free versions of these maps, I think that'd be great. As it stands, though, I do think that they are a little busier than is needed for a Game Master book, for a Game Master focused book. If you're going to have this level of detail, I'd want it to be a player-facing thing. Anyway, that's a quibble. It's just a quibble that I have. So yeah, it looks like there's just a ton of dungeon rooms. Might actually be interesting to use these if I was going to be playing some 4 Against Darkness. It might be interesting to have some reason why I might pop one of these rooms in instead of one of the standard 4 Against Darkness rooms. Maybe get a number chart for them, and if I get 2 6s in a row, or 2 doubles in a row or something, then I switch over and roll a chart and roll one of these rooms. I don't know. Again, just spitballing. But that could be an interesting thing, just to add one of these rooms in to make it a little bit more bizarre. Anyway. All right. So, cool. This looks, like it could be useful. Some useful plugins, especially if I'm doing some adventure design. It might be nice. That's what I've kind of used these other books for. These are not the kind of things that I'm going to have at the table. They're the kind of things where when I am prepping for the next session, if I want to bring in some interesting and odd characters, or even if I don't want to bring them in, if I just want to get inspired by a handful of these things, then that's great. That's actually something I need to do for the next scenario that I'm looking to run. I need to populate a small community with a few interesting characters, and I may be looking through this to be inspired by that. And it's sort of the same with the random encounters. This is really more, it has some charts in it that are kind of random and useful and stuff, but this is really for designing. It's encounters, it's parts of scenarios, plug-in scenarios, that kind of thing. Yeah, not really at your table kind of books. And it looks like the same for this. It's more for during prep, when you want some ideas, when you want to expand on some stuff. Anyway, this is a cool series. They're, again, usually you can find them fairly inexpensive. These are hardcover books. Cracking aside, this doesn't look like a poorly made book. It just has a spine that is definitely making some cracking noises. But anyhow, these are all, nice hardcover books, sometimes well under $20. You can't really argue too much with that. And this was a soft cover for, I think it was just about 10. It was maybe a little more than 10. I can't remember. I think it was on sale when I picked it up for like 10, something like that. Anyway, that's what I've got today. Have you checked these books out? I don't know, going for the engagement. What do you think of my new camera? Is it noticeable? I'm just looking at my screen, and of course the table's still wobbly. That hasn't changed. This is still a very little effort channel, but I don't really notice any difference. I don't know if it shows up better on YouTube. Who knows? Anyway, take care.